Good evening, everyone. Hello, my name is Livia Meneghin. I'm a board member at the Writers' Room of Boston. I'm so happy you could join us on this very cold, frigid November edition of our virtual series, Readings from the Room. For anyone who's new to us, the Writers' Room of Boston is a co-working space in downtown Boston for any and all writers, established and emerging, who want or need a place to write, a quiet place. We all need that. The room is open 24 hours a day, providing desks and the companionship of other writers. We've been serving writers of the greater Boston area since 1993. During and since the pandemic, the room offers online resources as well, including this reading series and an online writing group with prompts and discussions. That's really fantastic. Evelyn helps us with that. In January of this year, we inaugurated also a series of interviews with guests knowledgeable of topics such as getting your work to a publisher, agents, guidance for online publishing. So if you're curious or have any questions about the room and its programs, you can contact us at info@writersroomofboston.org and check out our Facebook and Instagram posts at Writers of Boston. I will put that information in the chat in just a second. We always welcome new folks into our community and have different levels of membership, including a virtual membership for those who can't easily make it to the room. So if you're interested, again, check out our website as well, writersroomofboston.org. In 2021, we launched this series in particular, our reading series, as a way to reach out to the writing community during the pandemic and share wonderful writing representing a range of genres. This series is made possible by grants from the Mass Cultural Council, the Boston Cultural Council, and we also rely on friends. So if you enjoy this event, please consider making a contribution using the donate button on our website. Also, there will be a recording of this reading and a replay will be available on our website, along with recordings from past events. So tonight we have two readers, two poets, Mary Kovaleski Byrnes and Anna V.Q. Ross. As we go along this evening, feel free to use the question and answer feature in this box at the bottom of your screen, where you can type in your questions, and we'll have time for that at the end. So our first reader is Mary Kovaleski Byrnes. Mary Kovaleski Byrnes is the author of So Long the Sky from Platypus Press and from 2018. She teaches writing and literature at Emerson College and is a co-founder of the Emerson Writes Program, a free creative writing program for Boston Public School students. Her work has appeared in Guernica, Salamander, Palette Poetry, The Four-Way Review, The Boston Globe, Best of Net, and elsewhere. She lives on the North Shore of Boston with her husband and her two kids. Mary, thanks for being here. I'm so excited to hear you read.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Livia. Thank you to the Writers' Room. And I'm so happy to be reading with Anna today, this evening, and I'm just going to get started. Thanks to everybody who is coming out tonight. I hope you enjoy this reading. So I'm going to be reading from my current manuscript. I've been obviously writing a lot during the past couple of years about all the things that are going on. And motherhood and those intersections and reading Angela Garbus's Essential Labor. And so I wanted to start with a quote that's actually from a review of her book by Gia Tolentino. And it says, "It was fearsome to consider that the violence undergirding what passes as the American care structure endures because of the thing it can be undone by, which is love." So that sentence has been in my mind for years as I've been working through this manuscript. I'm going to start with the first poem that I'm going to read tonight. Is called The Balance. What I count on: the yellow afternoon school bus opening its doors, and there's my son, my daughter's morning call from her crib, the coo-coo of the morning doves in a blue June night, how the river birch always gives in to winter first, such admirable acceptance. When I speak to my friend of her 2-year-old's brain tumor, she says, "Last week, I was someone like you." What pushed me to this hell? Something invisible in his small body, one cell out of balance. When a country is working, they say the trains run like clockwork. Its weapons slumber in their empty threat. The headache is only a headache. The children take their medicine and go to bed. Let them load the hearse with our bodies when we're ancient and ready. They can savor the lull of long life in their mouths. And when the white van slows down our street, let it carry a man who's driven by one desire, to fix the broken light on my porch. The one I put on each night, just like all my neighbors do. The way we signal, I'm here, into the gathering dark. So this next poem I'm going to read is called To Christina with Carrier Pigeons. And I want to give gratitude to the poem Mary Sabist, who inspired this poem. All morning, I've thought of you feeding your chickens. Their hilarious pom-pom scuttle, the orchids brushing the top of your head as you move under the old tupelo tree, scattering seed. And willed you to stay pregnant, your body growing tighter, the band of sweat under your maternity jorts, how in college we would have never imagined what kinds of things we would want, what would make us laugh now. Our ignorance of the existence of maternity jorts. Your very many chickens. What a geriatric pregnancy even was. I walked to my appointment today through the gray, muddy march past the puritanical houses and their sad beige everything, where the ultrasound tech moved the wand and took her photographs. When I first started doing this, she said, I wondered how I'd ever learn to see what I needed to see. The tech told me she had to learn to look horror in the face and be stoic. So I told her I'm a poet, even though I never, ever lead with this. We laughed at how different we are, she and I, though I'm not so sure. I'm reading about Simone Weil, how she said that attention is the deepest form of prayer. I can't seem to pay attention to anything lately, my mind switching like two blackbirds bickering. Once, long ago around here, there were enough carrier pigeons in migration that they'd blot out the sun. They'd destroy your harvest and crash the limbs of sickly trees as they piled on to rest and mate. What if you try to imagine this? A sky mottled with birds, a gray winged static eclipse, each body bouncing sound off feather or bone, weary from an entire continent, and the smallness of your family gathering around you in the yard, staring skyward in disbelief as the wind of so many bodies rushes over you all and away. Afterward, she left me in the empty room to put on my clothes and socks. I always find that funny, the privacy they give you after, as if. I know you will be in a room like this today too. I wish I could tell you a different story. She left her screen on, her last cryptic photograph, so I can only tell you what I saw. A dark shape, sonorous like a cave, like trenches, like an empty sky, like an open-mouthed sigh, and the things I didn't even know were there, that only she had seen. So the next one I'm going to read, I always like to read a poem that takes us all back to Pennsylvania, which is where I grew up. So this is from my waitressing days. It's a long time ago. It's called In the Break Room with Mara the Mennonite. And it starts with a Susan Sontag quote. 10% of any population is cruel no matter what, and 10% is merciful no matter what, and the remaining 80% can be moved in either direction. We split someone's leftover fries, and she tells me she's getting married. I idolize her most for her long, strong legs that she doesn't shave, that bike her from farmlands to waitress. She tells me she lives by one rule only: turn the other cheek. This is what Jesus meant, she says. Someone has been shitty to us about their undercooked burger, about their too warm white wine. It's summer, and everything in Pennsylvania is warm. Mara and I keep our hair wet to cool down, chew ice when we're not swiping fries off plates. We are more than 90% water that summer. We are rivers and lakes and licked sweat and hands under our bathing suits. We sort the customers into kindness and dicks, into German tourists and those who tip. We need everyone to love us. Is it me? I want to be capable of mercy, no matter what. The next one is also somewhat of an old poem called Morning Run. Everything that breathes in this place took root in the bodies of what once was. If we were to acknowledge it, what would we say? This land was once home to the Pawtucket and Wabanaki. The subdivision once a salt marsh. The bulldozer, my lineage to inherit. After college, my roommate flew off to Iraq for nation building, she said. She emailed me from her makeshift office in Saddam's old palace, where she took her morning runs around his artificial alligator pit. Today, we loop our neighborhoods outside Boston and Chicago. Our children call out as we lace up our sneakers, shrink from their vision. Between houses, the reeds jockey for moisture. Between reeds, the blackbird claws and sways. Its red-capped wings give it away. Once, the midwife taught me how to temper my breathing to keep my body from tearing. Find a pinpoint at the center of pain's maze. The blackbird is a species of least concern. Like all histories, we've missed what was standing right there, called a peopled land empty. What is the name for a land full of bodies? Don't call it a nation. What is the name for a land full of bodies? My phone blinks, a sky filled with falling leaflets over palm trees, lit silver by the sun, and so many mothers holding their trembling children's ears. What is the name for that kind of thing? What is the name for the sound the wind makes when it races, frantic and searching? The sound of the hanging light shaking before the house falls for good. So when I was trying to think of like what to read today, even putting this together and trying to order everything for you all, it kind of mirrors what my life is like right now. It's 1 minute I'm trying to find, time to do something basic like exercise or take a run, or meet some other basic human need. And then the next I'm being interrupted by a child or work, or then I'm my phone, and then I'm looking at terrible violence on my phone. And then it's time to get up for the day and make breakfast and get the kids out the door. So I feel like this is kind of like what living is like right now for so many of us. So this next one, it's a bit of a lyric mess of voices. It's my voice, the voices in my head, my children's voices, and it's called At 6 a.m., the children debate me on the rules of teleporting. The way dolphins travel, the horizon tilt and tumble, how a glacier leaks blue, and in the next instant, only the lonely valley remains. The walk to school was just too hectic with snowflakes. The sunrise half-court beyond the king pines. Ocean is right there. If your boat leaks, poof, empty, now rocking with seals. Anything you want, no longer beyond the realm, and what you might want to save, the child tucked into bed, the moment right before the explosion, lockdown. No, this isn't time travel. Can you find the missing? Never again. Too late. Never again. Lost to the rising tide, the army, the last breath, bedside, every sea star, every single feathered bird. Why not Mars then? Why not wherever your grandmother went? Wherever the coffee is better than what you just made? Get out of math class. Apparition in the secret gathering in the birch woods. Most importantly, parties. Most importantly, sleepovers. All the Skittles and popcorn. Wherever the coyote pups are howling. Treetops where the owls wake up. If you're holding the hand of your best friend, of course they get to go with you. All right, and this is going to be the last one for tonight. I think I'm good on time. And this is called Two Birds. Dead duck on the beach, her stone feet, her bent neck, the way my son wrote, rest in peace in the sand with his mittened hand. Oh, that's the time. Let's slow the tide's salty erasure. It's the first day of a new year. The gray sea calm, wind tousling the snow-laden grasses in a softer psalm. They say if you're lucky, you'll be able to see a snowy owl down from the Arctic to continue a family. Like us, they are in decline. When we bring up who we're mourning, we keep it short. We mark this milestone without them, and the gray surf churns their name. A new year without you in it. We will have to wait a long, cold month, spent doing 1,000 necessary, unnecessary things, until we pass through the frozen marsh one day, and a child shouts, wings. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mary. I love listening to your work because I've read it, and I think the listening experience is, you really pull off. How many times is maternity jorts in that poem? I love it. It's great. I have so many questions I want to ask you for after, but I'll hold them for now. Before I introduce Anna Ross, I just wanted to put that Writers Room of Boston information in the chat for everyone who's interested, and please use that Q&A so we can have some questions for our writers for the end. So Anna, I'll introduce you next. Anna VQ Ross's most recent book, Flutter Kick, Oh, such a good one, the new one. Won the Benjamin Saltman Poetry Award from Red Hen Press and the 2023 Julia Ward Howe Award in Poetry. Her other books include If a Storm, which was the winner of the Robert Dana and Hinga Prize, and the chapbooks Figuring and Hawk Weather. A Fulbright Scholar, Massachusetts Cultural Council Fellow, and poetry editor for Salamander. Her work appears in the Kenyon Review, Harvard Review, Missouri Review, The Nation, and elsewhere. Anna teaches at Tufts University and through the Emerson Prison Initiative, and lives with her family in Dorchester, Massachusetts, where she raises chickens. Find her at annavqross.com. Anna, thanks for being here tonight. I'm so excited to hear you read.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for that wonderful reading, Mary. It's funny, there are some confluences in our poems, which maybe people will pick up. So this is actually the first birthday of my book, Flutter Kick. So I'm going to read a few poems from it, and then I'm going to read maybe one or two from a new project that I'm working on. And I want to make sure I set my timer. Okay. I tried to choose poems that I feel are kind of answering the moment that we're in right now. So this one is called Anxious Talker. There is a place where words are born of silence, Rumi says. Is it a place of anxious talkers, the sort who can't be in an elevator without remarking on the weather, not waiting for a response? How about those pats? Or a place for all of us who knew the answer in second grade, but were afraid to raise our hands and now can't stop shouting, 7, it's 7, I know it too, at the teacher who praised the one girl who spoke, shaming the rest of us. She was the same girl who pulled your hair at recess if you wore braids and once punched you so hard in the thigh it left a bruise the size and shape of the dark purple pansies your mother planted each spring. Small purple flags to claim the soil of a place she wasn't born into. Slowly, the bruise grew a yellow halo, and you were silent about that, too, until your mother found it in the bath. The words that came then were hers, fear that you understood only as anger. Why didn't you tell? And a visit to the teacher, despite your pleas. It wouldn't work, you knew. That night, awake in the silent house, you fingered the bruise and heard, or thought you heard, a humming that might have been a word. There's a lot about motherhood and daughterhood in this book, and a lot about migration. My mother is an immigrant to this country, and we spent a lot of time going back and forth when I was a child to Ireland. So I've been thinking about that, where we find our homes, where we're told we belong a lot lately. And this is maybe one of the older poems in the book. It's called Self-Portrait as Invasive Species. In the Viking room of the National Archaeology Museum in Dublin, a glass case holds a child's leather boot, blackened but intact, with 2 soft flaps to wrap the ankle of a toddler. It sits between 2 knife sheaths in its numbered spot, 10th century AD, likely the son or daughter of a wealthy trader. The poor wore wood. Discovered under High Street, Christchurch, Dublin. Nearby, a model of their mud and wattle settlement within palisades, sharp under the museum's LED lights. Pails, cups, spoons and mortars, toy sword and model boats, blacksmith tools, carved rings and pendants from an amber worker's house found beneath Fishamble Street. A spindle whirl, and 3 bone pins, like fingers, my daughter cried, wanting to know if there were a real skeleton in the Viking coffin, boat-shaped by the wall. But I thought of gardens, What adopted shrub or flower would these intruders, traders who stayed long past trade, have counted on to signal spring? And then my mother, who one May day flew out from here, leaving, she thought, the crush of family, 10 siblings, a father drunk with church. No way for her to see the hull-shaped shadow of her plane cutting irreversible across Atlantic waves towards husband, house, 3 daughters, foreign-born, and all our toys and tools, those plastic boats and rubber boots, so permanently new. Wrestling with Gods. This poem starts with an epigraph by the great poet Wisława Szymborska. After every war, someone has to tidy up. You are in the small tornado of your own element, my son shouts from the living room couch, instructing his father on their next battle. No, like this. Thwack of cushions. I win. Narrative is important. Also, the rules. Who decides the terrain, personnel, weapons, size of the tornado? Yesterday, it was cheetah versus tiger, and my abdomen he rammed first with a pillow, then his head, as if trying to reverse the last 7 years. Other days, it's Thor and Loki, or Zeus and Apollo. Each time I brace myself into a tripod on my knees, wondering what we're preparing for as he storms across the practical, all-weather upholstery. Today on the kitchen radio, a BBC reporter somewhere near the Syrian border responds, "We understand that this may be a very dynamic war," to a question I didn't hear. I had to train myself to wrestle, learn not to flinch as my son dove toward muscles he once stretched, jabbing from within. We practice these battles already knowing the endings. You be Achilles, and I'll be Thetis, wringing the hand that held her boy's naked tendon as the president's helicopter retreats over the sea. Now in the living room, my son growls and tucks his chin as he becomes a Spinosaurus. My husband turns into a killer octopus, and the BBC moves to a new headline on a different continent. I steady myself against the granite lip of the kitchen sink, its crystals volcanic, all that heat turned element. And I'll end with one short one from this book. It's called Passenger Pigeon. I read once that they traveled in flocks as big as hurricanes and as far. Millions of birds flying so low you almost didn't need a gun to catch one. Just reach an arm up and grab. Too easy. Nuisance birds landing and deflowering a tree or field in minutes, then lolling around, dirtying the ground before the swift, swirling rise toward elsewhere. Who was their passenger? Or is passage the important part, the routes they moved through air? We care so much about who goes where, arm ourselves against the imaginary. No one believed they could die out. There were so many. And I'll end with a poem, or maybe two, we'll see how much time I have, from a new project I'm working on. And you'll just maybe notice that all of the poems in this series have the same title and same first line, and they end with the same final word. All my poems used to end in sky, but now they end in sleep, a kind of tumbling toward the inevitable. Or maybe that's what I want to believe, like the anonymous woman on the burning Orange Line train last week who jumped from the smoking window of the first car and then 30 feet off the Mystic River Bridge where the train had stopped. "I think I'm safer here," she told her would-be rescuers in the Coast Guard boat before she swam to shore and disappeared. Boston's new hero, crowed the headlines the next day. And maybe that's just where we're at right now, America. A woman uncoupling herself from burning steel to dive into a brackish current famed for absorbing heavy metals, petrochemicals, and other bodies, then swimming away without leaving her name. In the video posted on Twitter, her head is a small dark blot, almost obscured by halos of ripples as the camera pans from too far away to find her face. Boston strong, probably she was already late for work, people joked in the thread. But maybe she was on her way home from the overnight shift, I thought, but didn't say. A job she fell into years ago, never meaning to stay until the kids came along and she couldn't afford to pay both rent and a sitter. Now she relies on the jerk and clatter of the Orange Line to lull her back each morning over the bridge towards bed. I was very scared for all of us, she said, before hanging up on the one reporter who tracked her down. I imagined her turning over and pulling up the sheet, erasing herself back to sleep. And I'll end with that.
Wow, Anna, thank you. As a frequenter of the Orange Line, and just the line just where we're at right now, really hit me. Mary, we'll have you back as well. We have a great question already in the Q&A, and then I have some questions. We'll see how much time we have. So someone in our audience has asked, when writing about someone else, how do you know where the line is when writing about them? Do you just ask them? Do you feel like you have some sort of creative liberty to some degree? So that question, both of you, I think, could answer.
Well, I'll say that there were a few poems in this book that I worried about a little bit because I was writing, I'm writing about family. And there was one poem in particular where I showed it to the person ahead of time to make sure that they were okay with it. And it was fine. But in general, I don't know how Mary feels about this, but I think that the job of a writer is to write with compassion, no matter who or what your subject is. And if you're doing that, you're honoring them, no matter what you're saying or telling. And I think that people respond to that and actually often feel quite honored to like have caught your engagement. So that's how I try and work anyway.
I think that's a perfect answer. I love that, Anna. Yeah, and I think I would kind of say the same thing. I think if I were to give a little bit of advice too, I feel like things really shift for me when I actually think about putting the poem like out into the world, right? So I think you have the poems that you need to write to get them on the page and get, or whatever it is you're writing. But then there's this other kind of filter and layer that comes in when I start to imagine a reader with the poem. And then I'm kind of very protective then of the people that I'm kind of thinking about in my poems. And I think protective of the reader too, because like you're saying, you want to write with compassion, and that goes for who the reader is, and then if the reader is the person I've written about, like how is that going to go? So this question is a hard one, actually. I think we're making it sound like, oh, here's our answer, but yeah, I struggle with this a lot. I think it's a good question.
It is, you can be surprised though. I feel like I published a poem recently in the Arts Fuse, and I was a little bit nervous about it, but I felt that I'd done what I needed to do in the poem. And I'll admit that I was nervous about my mom reading it. And then I put it on Instagram, and she immediately commented about how much she loved it. So, you never know, like,
yeah,
how people are going to take your work. So yeah.
Love that. And can I just say, I love that you read your pigeon poem.
Was
that a game time decision, or is that just a wild coincidence that we?
No, I was already planning on it.
Amazing.
Yeah, I almost read a poem about a school bus, but I didn't do that. I was like, that would be a little too much.
A wonderful poem. So good.
I just want to sneak in a quick question. Mary, your first poem, The Balance, kind of inspired this, but um, uh, there's a line in that poem about admirable acceptance. And I'm curious for both of you, if you can answer quickly, I know with time, but what does that acceptance piece mean for how we create balance? Is acceptance part of is that something that's effortful or something that is about letting go of control? And maybe where do you see that in the content of your writing, but also in the writing process itself?
Holy cow. That's such a good
Maybe
question.
that's not a good quick question.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm writing like a whole book that tries to answer that question.
Okay.
It's called The Balance. That's the whole book. No, I think that's so good. I think for me, that image of the birch tree that loses its leaves first, it's like kind of literal for me, it's like I hate winter. And so I'm always like marking my time, like, oh no, what's coming? Like, oh, winter's coming. Like, and so to see a birch tree just be like, yep, here we go. We're starting it off. Like, let's go winter. There's that's like a inspiration for me. And I think motherhood has taught me a lot about this, and writing has taught me a lot about this idea of like just kind of accepting and not trying to control things all the time, because like I can't. And so yeah, that I feel like I'm gonna really not answer this question very well, but I think writing too, like if I try too hard to go for that image that I want, or that thing that I want to say, then sometimes it eludes you, right? And so it's kind of the acceptance of where the words take you, the surprise of the poem, to kind of answer it in a craft-based way. But I mean, yeah, this is something I'm really like thinking about and working on, and have been thinking about for the last couple of years, really, is like what even is this idea of balance, right? And yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, Anna, go ahead. It's a good one.
Oh, I was just thinking as you were saying that I've like totally given up on balance.
Yeah.
I mean, acceptance, yeah. Like there's,
Yeah.
I mean, and what you say about motherhood is absolutely true. I was just talking to my husband about that because our daughter's in 11th grade now, and she's going to leave soon. And I'm so not happy about that prospect, but I can't do anything, I have to just accept it, and it's right and it's good, but I mean, in terms of balance, I feel like that's something that, you know, it changes day to day.
Yeah.
And I think we're ever like, exactly on that fulcrum. And the more I strive for it, the more I find myself just frustrating myself. So I'd much rather just like let a process lead me. I mean, this new series that I'm doing, all of the poems start at the same place and end at the same place. And that allows, I don't know, maybe it's a balance of just like, I go into the poem and follow where it goes. And I guess you could say that the title and the final line, create a balance, but mostly it's just about, allowing myself to explore. Anytime I've tried to be like, okay, I'm going to exactly balance kid time, writing time, teaching time, it just never works.
No.
And so I sort of, I just, I don't know, maybe I'm happily unbalanced. That's probably a bad thing to say, like last word to say, but
I think we're all in the same position here, especially going into a busy time of year. So I think there's softness in knowing that we're all in the same spot, more or less. But I just want to thank you both for your conversation and your time. I really enjoy engaging with both of your work. And so thank you for your wonderful readings. Thank you to everyone who joined us. Please join us after the holiday season, in the new year. We're already on. See you next year. Tuesday, January 30th, we will have our next reading from the room featuring Boston area poets Tatiana Johnson Boria and Erin Caicedo Kimura. Super excited to hear from them. So thank you again, everyone. Have a good night. Stay warm if you're in the Boston area and enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.